I think you probably know that I'm a physician and internist, and about 30 years ago, I started to ask myself why you could have two patients who had the same illness, saw the same doctor, got the same treatment, and yet could have completely different outcomes. One person could recover, the other person could die. So I realized there was something missing in our model that we didn't understand. We had become superb technicians who knew everything about the human body and lousy healers because we knew nothing about the human spirit. About this time, there was a lot of research going on in medicine showing the effects of stress on our well-being. So it became very clear that stress was the number one epidemic of our times, and it was at the heart of all the other epidemics: heart disease, various types of cancer, cardiovascular accidents, dysfunctional immune systems, and much more. So over the last 30 years, there's been a tremendous amount of research on the bad things that can happen when people are stressed. And by stress, I mean they have a psychological or other perception of threat. Stress is defined as the physical or psychological expression of being threatened in one way or another. So as I said, there was a lot of research on this. And yet, when I spoke to patients and I would ask them about their motivations for getting well, about doing anything, why do you want to be healthy? Why do you want to have a good relationship? Why do you want to make a lot of money? Why do you want to do anything? And if you kept asking this question, in the end there was only one answer. If you ask people why they want to do anything, and you keep asking, why is that, why is that, why is that, in the end you get to one answer. They want to be happy. It turns out that happiness is the goal of all other goals. And so I started to ask myself, what makes people happy, and why should that make a difference? First of all, everyone wants to be happy. I don't think you've ever met a person who said, I don't want to be happy. But then you say, why should that make a difference? And there's a lot of very interesting information on that. When you're happy, your brain chemistry is different. You have different kinds of neurotransmitters, things like dopamine and opiates and oxytocin and serotonin. These are chemicals in your brain that give you the feeling of this internal sense of fulfillment, but these chemicals are also immunomodulators. They modulate the activity of the immune system. So they have a direct effect on your physical well-being. Happy people are healthier people. But of course, happy people are more successful. Happy people have better relationships. Happy people, in general, make more money, which doesn't mean that everyone who makes money is happy, but people who make money tend to be the ones that are fulfilled in other areas of their life. So it became a bit of an obsession with me. I said, everybody's studying stress. How about finding out what makes people happy? And how about actually finding out how that affects every area of their life? We are such a stressed society that we think only about stress and not its opposite. So here's what the latest research shows. And I'm going to share with you something that I hope you'll never forget, because it's the secret of all secrets. And it's called the HaPPiness formula. Okay, so you want to write this down? Okay. The HaPPiness formula is H, which stands for happiness, is equal to S plus C plus V. So I'll repeat that. H stands for happiness is equal to S plus C plus V. More important than E is equal to MC squared. Okay. And by the way, I didn't make this up. This comes from really good research from many medical schools and other social scientists. H stands for happiness is equal to S. S stands for set point in the brain. And the set point in the brain is very important. It determines about 40% of your happiness experience. And what's the set point? Happy people see opportunities where unhappy people see problems. That's the difference, okay? So right now, most of the world, which unfortunately most people belong to the second category, most people are not happy to begin with because they've been programmed to see problems. Unemployment, the financial crisis, all kinds of things. And I guess Kerry is turning that around, saying, hey, this is not a problematic situation, this is actually an opportunity. But the point is, how do we get this set point? How do some people look at any situation and they see problems, and other people look at the same situation, they see opportunities? Well, the bad news is that it's determined in the first 3 or 4 years of our life. If we, as very young children, are surrounded by people who are always complaining, condemning, criticizing, then we grow up like that. There's a mechanism to that. It's called mirror neurons. The neurons of a child mirror the neurons of their parents and their environment and their, basically their immediate environment, their caretakers and so on, brothers, sisters. So by the time you're 3 years old, or 4 years old, you're programmed to see the world in a certain way. So when you first hear that, you say, this is really bad news, I'm screwed. Because, I had nothing to do with it. And the good news is, actually, you can change your set point. You can change your set point, and there are many ways to do that. But first is, you have to start to look at things from outside the box. You have to reflect a little bit about why are you calling this a problem? Why do you think this situation is actually a problematic situation? What's the seed of benefit here? Because as you probably know, there's a saying, in every adversity is the seed of a greater benefit. So you have to start to reflect that. You have to ask yourself, why do I have this limiting belief? What is this doing to me? Who would I be without this? Is there an opportunity here? So there are many ways of shifting the set point, and we now know that it can be done. So that's the first part of the happiness formula, set point. The second is conditions of living. Conditions of living means, do you have enough money? And you will see what financial security has to do with health and well-being as well. Do you have enough to satisfy your material needs? Are you able to fulfill your desires? And so on and so forth. And so, material needs are a very, very important part of our overall experience of happiness. Then that's C, okay? The third part of the formula is V, and V stands for voluntary actions that we take every day. So the choices that we make every day. And there are two kinds of choices that people make every day. The first kind of choice is purely for personal pleasure. Having that glass of wine, going to a nice movie, going out for dinner, sex, shopping. These are choices that people make for pleasure. Do choices that people make for pleasure make them happy? Yes, they do. But the happiness is kind of transient. It lasts a few days after you've had the experience, and then slowly it plateaus, and then it bottoms out till you have the next pleasurable experience. There's a second kind of choice that makes people fulfilled, in that the happiness lasts. And that second kind of choice, it turns out, is choices that give you some kind of sense of meaning, purpose in your life. Choices that allow you to help others, to help a cause. And of course, the research also shows what seems to be very, very simple and obvious, that the fastest way you can be happy, if you want to be happy in the next 5 minutes, is you make someone else happy. And as soon as you do that, you experience an immediate shift in your own state of awareness. So there you are. That's the happiness formula. Okay? H is equal to S plus C plus V. There you are. So you say, well, if I apply these principles, does that guarantee happiness for me? And the answer seems to be yes, you'll be a much happier person if you apply these principles. You may not be totally happy, because human beings have another problem, which we call existential unhappiness, which means you're happy today, but you worry that you won't be happy tomorrow. Okay? Or you also worry about the past. You say, why did I do this? We have all kinds of regrets about the past, resentments. I was talking to a psychologist recently, and he said if you kick a dog, for example, the dog also has memory, and if you meet that dog 5 years from now, it'll attack you. But unlike a human being, the dog won't plan for 5 years how to get even. Okay. So because we have these past regrets, resentments, Nelson Mandela once said, he said, holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it'll kill your enemy. Doesn't work, but we do that as human beings, knowing that it's hurting us. And we also, of course, worry about growing old, and ultimately the big one, the fear of death. So it's complicated. It's not so simple. And so because this is such an important area of life, our own experience of happiness, how it affects our health, how it affects our well-being in so many areas of life, our ability to succeed. I've been engaged in this work for many, many, many years, and I realized that in the end, our happiness is linked to the bigger problems of society, such as the environment. We call it the environment, but it's not really the environment, it's our extended body. Trees are our lungs. If the trees didn't breathe, we wouldn't breathe. And if you didn't breathe, the trees wouldn't breathe. The rivers and waters of our planet are our circulation. They recycle through our body. The earth is also recycling as our own molecules. This air that we breathe is our breath, and we share it. So well-being is not some very simple thing. It's what we call a relational entangled process that includes you as a physical body, it includes your emotional well-being, it includes your social well-being, it includes your financial well-being, it includes your environment, includes, of course, your relationships, it includes whether you're happy with the job that you do, and your community in which you're a part, and it also it's affected by what's happening in the world. So things like, which we think are such huge problems outside there, social justice or poverty. I mean, here most of us are not aware that 50% of the world lives on less than $2 a day, that 20% of the world lives on less than $1 a day. How can we have social justice, or how can we have peace in the world, or how can we even begin to address the problems with our environment when there is such extreme poverty. And so, these problems, whether they're of social justice or economics or environment or war or terrorism, they seem to be separate problems. Okay, but they're not. They're all interdependent. And they're all interdependent on your well-being and my well-being. Now, for the last 5-10 years, actually 10 years, I've also been involved in research done at the Gallup organization. I'm sure you're familiar with Gallup. And at Gallup, and I have Danielle Poza here, who's from Gallup, and we work together at Gallup. And Gallup does all kinds of surveys, and you'll find some very interesting kinds of data which at first make no sense. For example, we found out in our research that if you have a happy friend, then your happiness goes up by 15%. But if your happy friend has a happy friend that you don't know, it goes up another 10%. And if your happy friend has a happy friend who has a happy friend whom you don't know, it keeps going up. And you start to say, how does the happiness of people that I don't know increase my happiness? And if it increases my happiness, then it must increase my health, because there's a direct link between the chemistry of happiness and the chemistry of our body and our relationships and so on. How does the happiness of people I don't know influence mine? And there are many kinds of answers to that. The most superficial answer is that when I'm speaking to you and you are speaking to me, it's not just me that is interacting with you, but all the people in my life. If I'm worried about my child and you're having an argument with your husband, that'll affect our interaction. So it's, even if I'm talking to you, it's all these people in my life and all the people in your life, and then the people in their life that affect our relationship. So once we recognize this, you start to see that there's a new paradigm emerging in what we call mind, body, and social interactions. And this new paradigm is, and for lack of a better word, I'm going to share this word for you. It's called entanglement. Entanglement means that everything that happens in my life is entangled with what's happening in your life. And that, of course, is important in our immediate relationships, but actually it's true of whatever is happening in the larger ecosystem affects us. Okay, that's why when you watch those videos just before I came, for Save the Children and the hungry child, it affected you in some way, didn't it? It also wanted you to do something about it, because your happiness and the happiness of that hungry child in Africa is entangled. And so we begin to ask this question. We keep saying our minds are entangled, our bodies are entangled, our environment is entangled, but a very fundamental question to ask is, everything we do happens first in our mind, and then it affects everybody else. So it becomes important to ask, what is this thing that we call the mind? And here's a very good definition of mind. Mind is a process. It's a process that's relational, has to do with relationships, but it's also embodied. So our mind is an entangled process that is relational. It affects our relationships, but it's also embodied. It's in our brain, it's in our body. It just happens to speak in English with an Indian accent in the brain, but it's all in all the cells of our body. So today when you say, I have a gut feeling about such and such, or my heart is full of love, you're not speaking metaphorically anymore. Your mind is in all the cells of the body, and it flows between us, and it flows through the whole web of existence, literally. And we have scientific proof of this, that there's no mental event that happens that doesn't have a brain representation, and there's nothing that happens to the brain that doesn't affect the body, and nothing that affects the body that affects our relationship. So we see how inseparable we are, how interwoven we are, how, in a sense, at a deeper level, we are totally interdependent, and how your well-being and your success influences my well-being and my success, and ultimately the well-being of our planet and the future of our planet. And we're still trying to solve these problems one thing at a time, when we know at a deeper level they're all connected. So at Gallup, we looked at these areas, and here are some of very interesting data, okay? Your well-being, even ultimately a spiritual well-being, which is a whole different issue, has to do with existential problems, but your well-being depends on 5 big areas of your life. The first is career well-being. Okay, are you happy with what you do every day? And when this question was asked by Gallup across the world, only 20% of people said they were happy with what they did every day, which is a very kind of dismal statistic. Only 20% of people are happy with what they do every day. And we spend 8 hours a day, or even more sometimes, with our jobs. One of the most alarming statistics that has emerged from studies like this is that more people die in our civilization on Monday morning at 9 o'clock than at any other time of heart attacks, because they hate their jobs. Okay? This is an extraordinary accomplishment for which only the human species can take credit. No other animal knows the difference between Monday and Tuesday. We also found that the people that you work with are very influential in your state of well-being. So, for example, if your supervisor or the person that you work with, if he or she ignores you, your rate of disengagement goes up by 45%, and sooner or later you fall sick. If the person you work with doesn't ignore you but criticizes you, then you actually get better. Your rate of disengagement falls from 45% to 20%, because as human beings, we would rather be criticized than ignored. To ignore means you don't exist, but when I criticize you, at least now I'm acknowledging your presence. So your rate of disengagement goes up to 20% down. But if your supervisor or the person you work with actually notices something good about you, a single strength, your rate of disengagement falls to less than 1%. Just this factor alone influences our economics in 1 year in the United States by $280+ billion of lost economy by people who are not appreciated at work, who are not encouraged, or who don't enjoy what they're doing. Okay, so I'm coming to why what Kerry and Kerry are doing together with their wonderful team is so significant, because I don't just see this as is something that is a good opportunity for you. It's much bigger than that. Of course, it's a great opportunity for you, but it's much, much bigger than that, okay? Career well-being, because it's obvious that everyone, from just listening to being here this morning and seeing the great emotional bond that you have, is you guys like to hang out together, okay? And you all want to do this, encourage each other, and make sure that everybody else is also affected in all ways that you want to be affected. So that's the first thing. The second thing is social well-being. Social well-being, I've already talked to you, is dependent on your social well-being, is dependent on the well-being of people that you engage with. Your relationships, not only with your family, but also with your professional colleagues, with your children, with your friends. It's a very significant part of well-being. In fact, in Gallup, the data suggested that if you have less than 6 hours of social interaction in a day, you're not doing justice to yourself. The third area was physical well-being, which has the usual obvious things, exercise, good sleep, managing your stress, good relationships, healthy food, but you can see that physical well-being is so totally dependent on the other aspects of our life. But we also found in this whole areas that if you want to do something for your own well-being, whether you want to lose weight, you want to change your diet, you want to exercise, you're going to be much more successful if you do it with other people, and especially with people that you enjoy a bond with, an emotional bond with. Okay, so let's move from physical well-being, social well-being, career well-being, to the fourth area, financial well-being, which is very significant, and it means basically that you do not worry about finances, that you're not living in debt all the time, that you're not worried about having bought things that you spent money for that you hadn't earned, and now you're worried that you can't pay your debts. I mean, it's now not only a situation with people in our country, but it's become the state of our country itself, that we are in such huge debt that it's affecting the well-being of the country right now, that we are threatened by the fact that China and all these other countries are emerging markets, that jobs are going outside and people are getting unemployed. This has a direct impact on the health of the nation itself. And that has huge impact on the standing of this country in the world as a world leader. The United States has always stood for the great values of humanity, freedom, and so on. But if our country is suffering from economic distress, unemployment, financial anxiety, it's going to affect our standing in the world. And this is a country that has actually led the world with its greatest of ideas. So financial well-being is a very important and significant component. And finally, the last bucket of well-being is what we call community well-being. So you have career well-being, you have social well-being, you have physical well-being, you have financial well-being, and community well-being is that when we create communities where we are bonded with people and we see that the health of our community can actually have such an impact on our personal well-being, and there's a reciprocal relationship, and that's where these great causes, the mission to millions that you've been hearing about, these are such important things because they totally link with all other aspects of our life. Only when we can take care of these, then we can answer the big questions of our life. What does it mean to be human? What's the next phase of our evolution? Where is the human species headed? But I think this is a time of great crisis, and it is also a time of great opportunity for those of us who are a little bit awake. So when Kerry came to me and explained to me the 4 areas that American Power, and especially the new initiative on energy credits and renewable energy credits is headed, I suddenly saw, just as he spoke to me about these 4 areas, save, give, share, and earn, I suddenly saw that these 4 areas had, just in these 4 areas, because it's not only about saving the planet and the environment, but saving our own well-being in a sense. That giving is such an important part of this, because giving is the flow, which allows the receiving as well. Life is a flow of giving and receiving. If there's only receiving and no giving, it's stagnation. It's like your blood, if it doesn't circulate, it clots. And if it clots, that's the end of the story. So giving and receiving is such a huge flow. It's life itself. So here you have the first bucket, or you say save, but give, share, bring other people with the same ideas into it, and then ultimately earn. And you saw the interdependence, and I suddenly not only saw the interdependence of these 4 areas, that it was such a remarkable idea, that it was a real spark of genius, to say the least, because I'd never seen any social network with this kind of idea. And then I also realized, and you saw that video that was shared with you, that now because of our social networks with Facebook and Twitter and all the others, we are actually enhancing the entanglement of our minds, but also we're literally building right now, unbeknownst to us, we are building the networks of a new planetary mind that will transcend our limited identity, that will really make us global citizens. And we have such an opportunity by creating a business out of this. And so, I said to myself, people have always said, socially responsible business, but it boils down to one or two little things that people do so they can feel good about themselves. But here's a very practical way. And for years and years and years, I've been thinking, and that's been my mission all my life, I wanted to reach personally, when I say personally, not out of a sense of ego, but just, if you have impact in the world, how is it going to really create a better world? And I said, we need 100 million people that have this consciousness that will create a peaceful, just, healthy, and happy world. And a peaceful, just, sustainable, healthy, and happy world. And all those things are totally linked. And then I saw the 5 buckets I've been talking to you about, and I saw the plan that you have. I said, this is it. I mean, we could actually, and I use my words very carefully, but this is an opportunity for you not only to save, give, share, and earn. This is an opportunity for you to become the transition team for a new planetary civilization. And I mean that. Okay? We have never had the ability before. We have never had the ability to communicate the way we have instantly. The other day somebody tweeted to me a question, and the question was, how do I find the right person? And I tweeted back, I was actually on a flight from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and I was boarding the flight, but I get my tweets on my little BlackBerry, and I saw this, how can I find the right person? So I quickly replied, I said, instead of finding the right person, become the right person. Okay? And then I boarded my flight, and by the time I got into Los Angeles, that one sentence had circulated in 3 million people across the planet. Okay? So what I'm saying is, what the ability we have for personal transformation and social transformation and planetary transformation has never existed before. And all I want to say to Kerry and Kerry is thank you for creating the platform, for making that happen. Thank you.